All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you to LALIFF and Latinx in Animation for today's incredible lineup of animation events. I'm going to kick things off by introducing myself. I am Jenny Lorenzo. I'm an actor, writer, content creator, formerly known as Cuban Abuela. And I also do voices for animation or los muñequitos, as my abuela used to call them, los muñequitos en televisión, on the little tiki tiki. In terms of this fantastic film, The Mitchells versus the Machines, the character I relate to the most is 1,000%. I know everyone's gonna say, of course, pero Katie Mitchell. I was that girl in film school with chipped nail polish, and I do have a dog, but she looks more like a croqueta de jamón than a loaf of bread, but you get the point. So I want to introduce you to our wonderful guests and creative geniuses behind this animated feature, the Mitchells versus the Machines, Phil Lord, Lindsey Olivares, and Guillermo Martinez. Thank you all for being here. Please introduce yourselves, the roles that you played in this, and who your character of choice is.
That's a tricky one. My name is Phil Lord. I'm one of the producers of the movie. I would say I really relate to the guy who wants to be in the fun pod. You know what? Just beam me up, put me in the box, turn on the TV, and we'll see what happens.
Okay.
¿Y tú? My name is Lindsey Olivares, and I am the production designer and also character designer on The Mitchells versus the Machines. And I guess to the character that I would relate the most to, like you said, Jenny, probably Katie Mitchell, as being, artist, creative type. Really could relate to her as an artist, filmmaker, especially that point in my life of going to art school. It felt like this movie in a lot of ways felt like it had that energy of a bunch of young film students trying to make something fun and weird. So that's kind of an obvious one. But in ways, the characters are so real that I feel like there's a lot of times when I'm using a computer that I feel like I'm Rick Mitchell. So there's a little bit, there's a little bit of each of them that I think we can see ourselves in.
I love that.
Yeah, and Guillermo Martinez, and I'm the head of story on the movie. I work with Jeff and Mike pretty closely on coming up with jokes, and we're helping make this giant, amazing film. And if there's a character that I really relate to, and it's because I just became this is my first year as a father.
Hi, congrats.
Thank you. It's the giant elder Furby. That sense of protectiveness, I just want to protect if something were to happen to my daughter, I'd be like, let the dark harvest begin.
You want to share the story of how you used to test on the Furbies growing up? Okay, that's hilarious.
Yeah, I remember playing once with a Furby and then hearing that it had black goo inside of it, and then I cracked one, and indeed it had black goo, and I was like, I don't even know where to begin with this. It's like
opened it, and it had a powerful slime inside.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. It was just black goo, and I was like, what is this? And I was like, when you want to see it, but then you see it and you're like, maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah. That's
Furbies
wonderful.
are demons. That's probably why my abuela never let me have one. She sensed the negative energy. So first of all, tell us what you can about the origin story for the Mitchells versus the Machines. What about the story from Mike Rianda inspired you to join the project, and how did it evolve? What is the story?
Guillermo, were you the first in of the three of us?
No, I think Lindsey was.
Yeah. I was pretty early. I got an email from Mike his first week, I think, at Sony, and he's like, "Hey, I'm pitching a movie. I need some art for it." So I joined back then, and a lot of the core of the story was really there. A lot of it changed too. It definitely evolved a lot. At that point, there was instead of the dumb robots, the road trip was with the president. And there were some differences in the story for sure. There's a lot of stuff that's changed, but the real core of it, who the characters were, he had such a clear point of view on. It's based on his family and it's really personal to him, and so that was really clear. And I think to your question about what kind of attracted us to it, that I think that genuine, heartfelt kind of core to it, I think was really attractive. And it really like felt like it was going to be kind of what it ended up as, something that's very, has a lot of heart in it, a lot of authenticity. And I think him kind of being really specific about his family and people, I think makes a final product that I think a lot of different people see themselves in different ways.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was like, I think I joined later on when they started hiring the story team. But like for me, I had moved from LA back to Portland to be with my wife, and I got a message from Mike via Facebook, and he was like, "Hey, you and I have mutual friends. I'm working on this movie. Would you want to work with us?" And I was like, "I just moved to Portland. I don't want to go back to LA." And then he's like, "Well, let me pitch it to you." And then when he pitched it to me, I think it was like this automatic like frustration of like, why is it that this movie is now showing up in my life? Why didn't it show up until I like moved to when I was still in LA? And he and I think the thing that sold it for me was he's like, I want to make Little Miss Sunshine meets the Terminator. And I was like, can we do that as an animated movie? and yeah, and also I think his the specificity of the family, when he started talking about his dad and how it's tied so much to Rick, and the stories of his dad being like this guy who builds bathtubs in the middle of the forest, and he's like, now I can bathe in the nude in the forest. Which in my mind, I'm like, I thought you could always bathe in the nude in the forest, but really, it was just kind of like I hadn't seen a family like that in animation, in a feature animation movie before, so I was like really into it. And I think once we started working, like it was pretty clear that me and him had the same sort of like love of the specific comedy of like almost like kind of bleak but slightly cute comedy, and we made each other laugh, and it was a kind of a really nice relationship from the very beginning.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And Chris Miller, my producing, directing, writing partner, and I were roaming the halls of Sony Animation, working on Spider-Verse, and I believe we were visiting Lindsay Duran, who we work with really closely, and she said, "Oh, you got to meet my office neighbor, Mike Rianda. He really reminds me of you guys back when we met on Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs." And I looked into his office. He wasn't there, and every surface was covered with drawings. And it just looked like a mad scientist lived there and possibly slept there. And I was like, oh yeah, I can see why. and we just loved getting to know Mike, and we got to see an early cut of the movie and felt like we could help him. But the thing that was so obvious about the picture already is that it was filled with love and the energy of people making a movie for the first time. It was so joyful and so funny, and the moment to moment filmmaking was all so strong that it really honestly just seemed like easy money for us. I was like, oh, this is so great. Everyone here is wonderful. We don't have to, all we have to do is give people some of the information that they'll figure out for themselves 10 years from now. And maybe we can short circuit a little bit of that. And it was a true joy to work on. Every day I worked on the movie, I had a smile on my face.
Oh, that sounds like a dream. Happy for you guys.
Rare.
Bill, this question is specifically for you. What was the journey of bringing the Mitchells versus the Machines to life as a feature?
It is challenging for any studio these days to make original animated movies or original films to begin with. It's a little bit scarier. It's a little bit harder to market. And so we all did a lot of work to convince people, help them understand why we thought it was going to be really salient in the marketplace. We had the benefit of having shown the movie to some early audiences and gotten some really positive feedback. Like these guys are saying that family and their relationship and their specificity and their strangeness is so relatable. It was indestructible. Like the movie's plot made no sense, but the family was so strong. It was everybody's favorite part of the movie 3 years ago. So you knew that you just knew it was something that was going to connect, and that was our argument. And the studio finally relented because these movies are expensive, but I think we all were able to make the case that it was going to be really special and worth the risk. And it's hats off to Sony for backing the movie, and when it wasn't necessarily easy to do so.
And Guillermo, how did you maintain the cohesion of the story?
Through trial and error.
I see.
No, it a lot. I've been contacted by a lot of people saying, "Man, it's just like it works in every way," and I'm like, "Well, that's funny because like for 4 or 5 years, it didn't work at all." But it's like the weird process that we're like into. It's like, yeah, wait, 5 years of just torture to get a really good movie. I'll do it. I'll suffer. But yeah, because there were moments like, going back to like what Phil was saying about like how the family got really, people love the family. There were moments where we would just like go away from the family to try to do some really funny gags that we thought were funny, and the crowd would immediately be like, no, I don't care about these things, just take me back to the family that I love so much. And it was like such a learning experience. I was like, oh my god, like they really love the family. So we made sure that whatever happened, it was like really like character centric, and like we focused on like like the dino stop scene like changed so many ways, and like we were trying to like do all cool things, like try to make it like feel like Children of Men but like for kids. I was just like, it's a one shot of just like this long take of like them running through, and it's just like fun for us. That's like, yeah, we're doing this. But in reality, you were never like in the head of the family. You're like, what is Katie thinking about right now? What is Rick thinking about right now? Like, and then that's automatic. Then that took us like what, like maybe like 2 or 3 years into the movie to realize, oh yeah, we have to like focus on what they want. And the scenes just started to come into life. Just like when you have Katie being like, I know how to solve this problem, and Rick going like, I know how to solve this problem. We're like, that's the film. Like for example, like one of the things that showed up late was the butterfly formation, which was and that came from the idea of like, oh, they're imitating what they think is the perfect family, and they will try to imitate them as much as possible, and because of that, it just goes to shit. Oh, sorry, it goes to everywhere. I don't know how much person I can do. Yeah, but it took like a long time, and then when like Phil and Chris came in, and it was just like them. I learned a lot more about comedy from watching them. Just throw it, like I remember I was like, I think this is funny, and then Phil will be like, why am I not laughing? And I'm like, aha!
Oh no!
I will make him laugh.
I'm sorry.
No, but you didn't know. It's all good. No, but as someone like me who's like us story people, we're like we're like skateboarders. We're like constantly falling and hitting each other, but we love that because we're gonna get better and better and better. So it just made me want to become a better like storyteller. So yeah.
I really like that skateboarding analogy. I think a lot of people can relate to it and not feel so bad about it, because it's to us outsiders, we look at this film and it's like, wow, this all made so much sense. It's seamless. But you went through a lot those 5 years to figure that out,
Yeah, and it was a nice relationship too with like the art team. Like there was like, we would do boarding, and then the art team would do some other stuff that would inspire us. And then the cycle started happening where that like really just shaped the movie. And it's magical. Like it's one of those things where like you're like screaming making a movie, and then you're like, oh, I'm seeing the movie. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's like all worth it in the end. Yeah, claro. No, it's awesome.
But there's a difference between a film crew and a film unit, and I think that this crew was always a unit in my experience. One department informed another, and it was so clear when the movie came out how much you guys were were together on it, and I'm just so happy to be part of something that feels like it's the best representation of what an animation crew can be. You know, it's super inspiring. Guillermo's being very modest. He must have drawn half the drawings in the movie. He must have come up with half the jokes. I mean, and then of course, for every joke that you see, there's 25 that some of them were good, some of them weren't, but they were all tried and they all got boarded and drawn. And Lindsay's contribution is so electrifying to me, and the crew that she put together. It just really is. My hat's off to both you guys.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
And Lindsay, this question is for you. So this film, The Mitchells versus the Machines, is a goofy family road trip meets Black Mirror, dunked in internet culture. Love it so much. How did you develop this aesthetic, and how did you settle on the final, extremely hysterical version?
Yeah, I think a part of like the style kind of came just with like the early development art and kind of the way that I was drawing like early sets and the characters and that kind of, and that stage 2 were really early and not exactly thinking about the final render, but there was kind of a life to those drawings that as we got closer to it potentially becoming a real movie, we really wanted to hold on to as much of that kind of early, like natural, vibrant, just kind of sketches and character designs that we had done. And I think ultimately, like thinking about the production design of it, it's like we have a movie that's about humans versus robots versus technology. And it felt like, how do we visualize that and visualize that in a way that, one, you're really rooting for humans, and that it can be kind of like a love letter to our like real human world. So part of that, the look, it's like making it feel like a human hand has made it. You know, that's obviously always the case, even if it's in the computer, but I think we wanted to strip away a lot of the perfection is a big thing that you get from a computer. Computers make perfectly straight lines. They can perfectly shade and reflect things, but we're all about kind of celebrating imperfect humans. So it's kind of better for us to have a line have that wobble that your hand has naturally, and lines aren't perfectly parallel. So all of that, it was in every way kind of embracing humanity. So that's in kind of the shape language. It's in kind of how we surface things, that it feels kind of handmade, kind of almost not quite stop motion, but almost cues from kind of being like painted or drawn in marker, which is both a human thing and also kind of relates to Katie as a filmmaker. Marker is kind of a part of her drawing on herself, on her shirt, you know, in her project. So it has a bit of that kind of our main character's influence in it. And, you know, then there's that contrast of contrasting it against what's kind of a caricature of tech companies. You know, it's kind of this extreme thing where we're in these kind of like minimalist kind of great gradient spaces that are very kind of inspired by modern tech app design and stuff like that. So contrast really was a lot for us. And with that, it kind of got this kind of collage feel, which there's a kind of caricature of what the big Silicon Valley tech companies brand themselves as and look like, but also that's not really what we know technology as. We use it to create, you know, like Katie, you're using it to storytell. Kind of everybody now, you have a space to storytell on your Instagram stories, even if you're not like a filmmaker. And with that, you see like this kind of language that's very collage based, people putting stickers, GIFs, layering things. And so, I mean, more than anything, we kind of wanted to highlight like Katie's filmmaking style, but it definitely takes cues from the kind of tools we have with, you know, with our cell phones and stuff that you can kind of layer elements. There's like a kind of a cool tone that you get from that. So there's a little bit of that, like in the what we would call Katie Vision. We have these kind of pop-ups that kind of overlay on top of the kind of more traditional media render, kind of mixing that in with things that have like some elements of photo collage, really kind of naive doodles, her filmmaking style, and hopefully all coming together to celebrate humanity, celebrate like the Mitchells, Katie Mitchell, and all of that. Yeah, so it's all really the story. You know, the story always kind of motivates what our choices are for the look of the movie. That's kind of the big driving force, and it all felt like it was really clicking with what the story needed.
Absolutely. I think the aesthetic just matched everything perfectly, and it really spoke to me more than most animated features. And I was, again, I'm not an artist, so for me, I'm like, this is making me feel something, but I don't know what it is. There's a lot of nostalgia, and also Katie, a lot of the elements in her filmmaking reminded me of like E-Bomb's world and just the beginning of the internet and memes, and I just thought that was really cool. So I did appreciate all the little details, like what she would doodle on her hands and like the stickers on her laptop. That was really nice. So each of you brings the Latinx lens to your work. How does that influence your creative process?
Who's going to start?
Well,
you asked such a good question. Go ahead.
I light it up, but right now there's a bunch of Latino kids going like, why are they stalling? Why are they stalling?
No pressure.
No. I mean, I don't know. Like for me, I think I get inspired by there's not I haven't met I know there's some, but I haven't met a lot of Puerto Ricans in the animation industry, and so I'm one of these people who is always trying to, like, you know, I have chatted with people back in the island that has said like that I was like, oh, I would love to like work in an animated movie eventually, but oh well, I mean that's too far away. And I'm like, no, it's not that far away. It's actually pretty simple. So just to be able to, like, I'm not saying like role model, but just to be able to like inspire other people back home, like that you can do whatever, you know, you can make as many movies as you want. There shouldn't be anything blocking you. Like I think that's one of my biggest things. Like I have this page that a Facebook group that I call Animadores Boricuas, which is like just like a Facebook page for just animators who are Puerto Ricans who didn't know other Puerto Rican animators, and just like, and it's a place where you can like, hey, share this thing here, like me and like another guy that I know, Christian Mercado, who's like this amazing like 2D animator. We're just always like chatting and like posting stuff there, and it's just really nice to just see that like there are more Puerto Rican animators around the world. And I think that's one of my biggest goals with, like, you know, I actually don't remember if that was a question, but like, but yeah, that's one of my biggest things, is just to inspire other.
Well, yeah, that influences your creative process because you're also thinking of how I can bring others up with me.
Yeah, and it's funny, like in regards to like the Latino inspiration, like, you know, there are moments in the storyboards where I was having Linda do some acting that like my mom would do, or like some act, or Reg would do some acting that my dad would do. Little things that would just, I'll be like, oh, that's a funny Puerto Rican dad thing or Puerto Rican mom thing. So I would always try to inject those in as much as possible. So I think, yeah, I think that, and I'm also really helpful when it comes to like when they're doing like a comedy punch up and then they need like a Spanish speaking character. I'm like, I wonder who they're gonna ask for.
Hey, Guillermo.
I know. Well, I mean, just to piggyback, I know that when I was growing up, I had an uncle who made a movie, and he made an independent Florida horror film, and just the fact that like I knew somebody who did that was so meaningful. So the fact that, that people can see these names on the screen and meet somebody as charming as Guillermo, or as brilliant as Lindsey, and it's sort of incredibly powerful. So I just think that's really critical. From me personally, I'm sitting in my Cuban mother's office, because I'm in my parents' house right now. But I think that there is, for me personally, something about being, half Cuban, half American, living in Miami where everyone is bilingual, that makes you understand that not everybody lives like you live, and that when you go out into the world, you realize that, oh, I'm a little bit different. And I think our characters that we've written generally relate to that feeling. I feel like when we're writing dialogue for Miles Morales, I'm like, oh yeah, I know I don't know what it feels like to be like Miles, and I know what it feels like to be an outsider, and I know what it feels like to be embarrassed of my Spanish in front of my grandparents. And I know, do you know what I'm saying? It's just, it's more than anything, it's just about relating to folks that maybe don't have as strong a sense of belonging. And I think that for me personally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, I can relate to what these guys are saying too. And it's like the Mitchells isn't like, I don't know that it's not like a Latino family, and it's not like there's like those exact specifics that are in there. But I feel like there's a lot that still resonates. Like Guillermo was saying, you can put things that are specific to you. And it feels like they end up resonating just, I think, for the more specific you are, the more kind of broad it can be in a way. Like, I think one thing that's funny is like in my, like more in personal work, I feel like, especially the stuff I was doing before I joined the Mitchells, a lot of it was very kind of inspired by like where I was in my life and what I was doing. And at the time I was like living with my grandmother who's Mexican, and like she was the one that really kind of taught me Spanish and stuff, and I would do little illustrations of moments together with her. And then while I was there, I was also doing like I got chickens because it was rural, and I did like a book of like, it was like a Spanish language chicken telenovela book and stuff like that. And that you know, at that point too, I feel like I was doing a lot more of like personal work that was kind of pulling from that place. But to go back to the, like, I do these little animations of me and my grandmother, and we might be like eating like conchas or something together. And that was the stuff that like my granda saw and was like, oh, I want in the movie to look like this stuff. And I think there's something really cool about like, they could be illustrations of me and my grandmother watching novellas together. And that still like resonated. It feels like in just as much of a way as it did with people that had those exact experiences. So I thought that was really cool to see that it's not like it's only appealing to a certain, you know, specific group of people. It does, but in the same way too, it felt like that was also in the same ways that like Mike could be really specific about quirks in his family that are not the same as the ones in my family. I think that as you go specific about yourselves, there's this kind of a place where you kind of meet and find kind of a truth that kind of resonates across, you know, your different, whether it's different cultures or different types of families. So yeah, there's that. And I agree too with what Phil was saying too about like how cool it is to like be working on these big projects. And it was cool. I got a message that was super cool of like somebody who had the same last name, and they were like, wow, I saw, like they found me and they're like, oh, I saw your name in the credits, and I've never seen like our name before in a big production like this. And now I feel like, you know, there's like, I could, you know, there's a space for me to be somewhere like that. And that was like super meaningful to hear, you know, and it's cool to kind of be a part of something like that.
I'm glad you brought up those personal animations that you've done, because I saw those before we had ever met. And we were talking about who should design the movie, and Mike said, well, we want someone, you know, we're really inspired by these images. And I was really blown away by the level of observation that was in them. And I really encourage anybody listening to go check this stuff out, because it's really, really special. And Chris and I were both like, well, you got to get her. Not everybody draws like this, and not everybody has an eye and knows how to look. And that's really tangible now looking at the movie and how it turned out, that the people who made this movie are looking carefully all the time and watching behavior. And it's you know, and it is a testament to when you allow those, whatever the thing is that's personal to you, to leach into your work rather than to edit it, just to embrace that. Like, I have this impulse because somebody said this to me one time, you know, and I'm just gonna like was a scene, I don't think it made the movie, in Spider-Verse, where it was like, oh yeah, I remember when I said the wrong word in Spanish class and I got made fun of. And I was like, and I'm just gonna put that in for no other reason than that's what popped into my head. That can be really, that winds up being so universal.
Yes, definitely. I would really like for the three of you to describe the heart of the story. because there are a few there are a few themes in this film, or more than a few. For me, some of them are, preoccupation with screens, public image online, family bonds, perfect, imperfect family expectations. What are aspects of the Mitchells versus the Machines that are deeply personal to you?
I would say that, I mean, I don't know. I think for me, like, if there's a scene that it would be like, that's the heart of the movie. That if you were to remove that scene, the whole movie would just collapse. Is Rick looking at the home movies? Like, it's just like, for me, like, if you take that scene away, then it's just like this guy who's like this silly guy. But like, seeing this guy, that moment, I was like, wow, this is like the most powerful moment, because you realize that he cares. Like, and he really, gives a poop about saving his family. Yeah, and it's the moment that I realized that the movie was about these two people who still love each other, but they're having problem communicating. Because for the longest time, I feel like the movie was like Rick and Katie fighting, and it just had such a negative energy that it just like made you go like, oh, I don't want to follow this family. But then like seeing that Katie's trying and Rick is not grabbing on, but Rick tries also. You're, as an audience, you're like, oh my God, you guys just hug each other. Like, it's just, you're there. And I think, yeah, I will always go back to that scene, because like, that scene has been there from the very beginning. It was storyboarded beautifully by this girl called Hannah Cho, who's part of our story team, and she's like our assassin when it comes to like emotional scenes. And like the way I love the way she pitches them too, because it's just, she's like, oh yeah, and then Rick does this and that and that, and she's very like calm about it, and we're like, Mike is sobbing and I'm sobbing, and she's like, oh yeah, I'm glad you like it, like, she's very cool about it. But it's yeah, I would say that, like, for me, that scene in particular right now is like one of the strongest ones.
I know we worked really hard to turn it from a movie about being in an argument with your dad to being a movie about people trying to get along with one another. And there are, and you're right, that scene starts it off, and you guys did such a good job of feathering in more moments and of them trying to put wins on the board. And then finally ending with Katie then doing the parallel to Rick, which is watching the home movies herself and realizing what he was doing and why, and feeling really crummy. And I do think watching the two of them both have these moments where they realize they've let the other one down, right, really animates the movie.
Yeah. And I think the movie could have been about zombies, but I think that always would have to stay in the movie. Like, it could be about anything, but that's the thing that is like, oh, that's the movie. It's not a movie about, I don't think it's like a movie about robots. It's a movie about a family trying to get together. Oh, and by the way, there's some robots running around.
Exactly.
Yeah. That family stuff, for me too, also like the imperfection versus perfection, especially with like the visuals and the family, like kind of needing to learn that feels like such an important theme and an important theme. I guess kind of mentioned that too, like with what we're used to experiencing and like social media, where we kind of want to present something that is more perfect. Even when it came to like the visuals, that was kind of a big philosophy we had about like, let's show what you normally like crop out of your Instagram picture, and that's where you start to see a little bit more authenticity, and can we kind of celebrate who we actually are and not who we try to like put on a filter and what we try to present. And so with that, like that kind of imperfections of people and families specifically, like really celebrating our families with whatever imperfections they have, and then like that's a big thing on screen. And I think behind the screen too, it's like we kind of become our own little family unit in this, and collaborating and working with people. You all kind of come from different places, different point of views, but you have, like, I had this amazing family of an art department that each kind of has their unique voices, and you kind of learn to kind of work together with this shared goal. And so that kind of team sport element of making these movies is really like beautiful too. So it's nice to like making a movie on screen that celebrates family, and you kind of do it with this new like animation family that you get to collaborate with.
I love that. That's really sweet. And that's what it's all about. That to me is like the perfect scenario. You're doing what you love with people that are brilliant and awesome. Um so, this film is like extremely hilarious. It's wacky. It's just I was laughing throughout. So from the way it's boarded to the production design jokes, this is specifically about the comedy for each of you, where does that come from?
Uh, I mean, hmm. I mean, to be honest with you, I think, I mean, the script that Jeff wrote and Mike Brianda wrote was like, or we're constantly writing, was just like a gold mine of ideas. Like, I think they were just like really, for at least for the story team, like they're like Mike had this way of doing like, like, oh, there's this one joke, and he would write like 5 or 7 pages of that one joke and different alternatives of how to explore that. And that just made us think even more of like, oh, let's just keep plussing this idea. And then I don't know, like I think I think, yeah, I think just the script was so good and it helped out. And I think also Mike created an environment where like it was okay to like explore even more ideas that were not in the page. There's a lot of jokes in the movie that were like, someone was like, oh, by the way, I did this little joke, and Mike was like, yep, that's it, that's perfect. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, I think the environment that we were in, there was just such a welcoming, like, let's just, and I think also too, like something that helped out as a story and coming up with all these jokes was that me, Mike, and Jeff came from TV, and like and then a lot of people who were in the story team were also from TV. So there was this almost like very quick turnaround mentality of like, let's just like come up with jokes and then like immediately like draw it as rough as possible and see if it works, and then just give it to Greg, and then he would put it in an editorial and see like, is it funny or not? And then Mike would do like the temp voices for all of the characters, and it's like, is it working? Is it working? That's not working. And that will all happen in like a span of 2 days. Like we would just like,
that's what I was wondering. I'm like, do you have to hear the actor? Because sometimes it depends on how the actor says the joke. Sometimes it's not funny on the page, and it's funnier when it's said. So that's interesting. They have people doing the
well, and also I think a good thing, I mean, I wasn't part of any of them, but like one good thing is that a lot of the actors are like have improv background, and so like they can I think they're allowed to like like do a lot of jokes, especially Danny McBride and Maya. Like I think they were just
stellar cast, like an incredible cast.
They're all so funny, and so you do a disservice when you say, I want you to do it the way we did it in Scratch. And by the way, Mike Briand is a really funny Scratch performer, and so is Jeff Rowe, and so a lot of our crew members. But once you bring in an actor, and most of them are writer performers, you kind of want to give them the area and play around and see what happens, because what's funny in my mouth might not be funny in yours, and we got to find your unique comedic point of view on that moment. And so, like Guillermo was saying, Mike makes a very safe environment where you don't get in trouble for trying something, and that's a big deal. So you get the best of everyone. And by the way, there's a lot of funny drawings. and you kind of tell, I think you guys must have cast a lot of people that like the drawings just make you laugh, and you can tell there's like a funny, smart, warm person who's holding the pencil. It's just something about it, and you kind of already laugh. I don't know why, but you need the great story artists that do that.
Yeah, and Guillermo was amazing at that. Like, when he's talking a lot about what comes from the script. And from my department, I'd see a ton of what would come from Guillermo and his team that was just like, hilarious. Like he could do a drawing and it would just do so much work to make you laugh, like as it was. So I think we were pretty good at like really like appreciating when we got those things, like, oh, this board drawing is hilarious. Like, let's really maintain the core of this as close as we can. And then how can we kind of plus things when there's space for it? Like, how can we make things funnier with the lighting or with these other elements we're adding to it? Like, but really also holding on to what's so like special in the storyboards. So I think that there's a lot of that kind of collaboration and like really, appreciating all these gems that we get from the story team. And I think we also had a pretty good dynamic too, from a lot of the production, Guillermo was my little next door neighbor, and there was a nice amount of back and forth and really trying to celebrate so much of what the story team was doing. And then, where we can, how can we make it funnier in other ways in the art department, and how can we keep plussing it with the ImageWorks team, with lighting, and just kind of collaborating and respecting all the amazing stuff that's kind of coming before us.
One of the good examples was the last scene. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, maybe
I had like 5 or 6 weeks. It's time to.
It's okay.
Take the spoiler band.
That scene where like Rick is saying like, hey, like what Katie's like, hey Des, you subscribe to my YouTube channel? I can't believe you know how. And then just cuts to Rick like breaking the computer and like just ordering from Amazon. That in the boards was bordered by Raymond Shu. He kept it so rough, but the rough boards were so energetic that I was like, this is really funny. Once it traveled into Lindsey's world, they added all these like very bright, intense colors that just took the joke and just made it even like shine even more. Like it was just like such a fantastic job from them. And when I saw the colors, I was like, oh my God, this looks like Requiem for a Dream or something, or Into the Void. I don't know. It's just wonderful.
That's that looking and sensitivity in every department. Like you could tell that the person who did the drawing in the storyboard was aware of Katie's internality and Rick's, how scared he was to do the thing, right? And what he was going through. And so there's so much sympathy for all the characters. And then it gets into the art department and they're like, oh yeah, I see what you're going for. Let me add that. Then you go to the animators and like they're relating to the thing. So so much of it comes from just caring about the characters, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It really is the best. Like the best metaphor is like, it's just like when Tony Stark is walking and the pieces of Iron Man are forming on top of him. Like that's what sometimes working on these movies is. Like, it starts as a good philanthropist, and everything, but then once you put all these other things, it's like voila. It's like, look at this amazing. I mean, I never.
Yes, living for the Iron Man example.
I don't know why. I just thought in my head, I'm like,
I see it. All the different teams are like,
yeah.
Oh my. Well, speaking of characters, I gotta ask, because I'm obsessed with dogs. How did Mochi the pug come about? And by the way, I met Doug. Okay, I didn't know this. I saw the film twice, and the first time I didn't notice, and I watched the credits. The second time, me caí para atrás. I was like, no, they did not cast Doug the pug, who I met at VidCon. My perra met him, by the way. I said, Delilah, you met a famous dog. Please tell me, how did this come about? Anybody here have a pug?
Our director, Mike Rianda, had a pug. His sister had the original Monchi. And so, yeah, like when I was first working with him on character designs, I'd get, like a character breakdown. And, Monchi, it came with a picture of him holding Monchi, and he was like excited for the chance to like give Monchi his moment to like live forever on screen. And yeah, it was a fun character. Like, I think he was always from the beginning supposed to be kind of like dumb, lovable, wall-eyed thing. And I love dogs too. I never had a pug, but I love dogs, and dogs in their weirdness, and what ways can we observe like weird things about dogs. So I had a fun time just doing like tons of like loose drawings of weird, fat, lovable, kind of a little pathetic
in his eyes, and then oh my God, bless his heart.
Yeah, so he was a fun one. And then I think also too, for his design, I think it got a lot of life too when it went into Guillermo's court and storyboards, and the kind of humor that was added, seeing him kind of come to life there, that then there was a lot that we kind of folded back into what we learned about him from storyboards into his final model. And I remember once Guillermo being like, yeah, like he's always just happy no matter what, no matter what's going
Everyone
on.
Wants to be
like that.
He's great. I wanted to pitch to Mike an idea for like a short where it's just the whole movie or the biggest parts of the movie through his eyes.
Oh my God, yes, that would be so good. Yeah. Please make it happen.
Yeah.
Like family dog, kind of,
yes.
Right?
Yeah, like family dog.
So how did that work? I mean, were y'all involved at all with this voice acting process from Doug the Pug? By the way, for those who don't know, Doug the Pug is an internet sensation. He is a celebrity dog influencer.
I mean, the thing about Doug is he does, you know, he's like Morgan Freeman or something. Like you know, you don't want to give him a lot of notes, you know, because not probably he generally doesn't take notes. What you see is what you get, and you're happy to get it. He does take treats.
I just couldn't believe it. Like I was like, oh wait, oh wow, he was doing the voice acting. That was amazing. So before we go to questions from the audience, what do you hope audiences take away from watching the Mitchells versus the Machines?
Well, I mean, I think if a dad can like, if a father and a kid can go watch the movie and basically like just like the father go like, Rick has a point, but by the end of the movie he's like, oh man, Kitty has a point, and then the other way around, then I'm happy. I think just hearing people just say like, oh, by the way, I called my dad, which I haven't talked to him in months, and I was like, oh, that's better than anything, you know, the fact that it inspired people to like call their parents, you know, like,
oh yeah,
it's just like it's a really beautiful thing, and you're so sometimes we're like so like focused in the movie, it's so micro in the movie that, and then we send that out into the world, we're like, oh, hopefully people like it, and then when we send that out, it just doesn't belong to us anymore. It just now becomes something that everyone can use. Like it gets its own life, the movie. Same. And so just seeing how people are are just getting like people who used to fight a lot, like are now like going back, going like, hey, I'm sorry. Like I think that's like the biggest reward. And then, you know, and if you haven't talked to your parents in a long time, watch the movie. Maybe you will be inspired to talk to your parents. I don't know.
Or just send them a link to the movie.
Yeah, just send them a link.
They'll call you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good term.
Yeah, I've seen comments or posts like that too, and it's super meaningful and super like cool to see that, you know, there's a line like that in the movie, you know, like with Rick and Katie about like, oh, who knew, like art could be useful or something. And it's like, you've seen people that are responding to the movie like that, like that it's they're relating to it, and that they're, like Guillermo said, like calling someone or having a conversation. Somebody wrote me something like that where they like watched it. They related, it was a person that related a lot to Katie, and I think her dad was a lot like Rick, and it like opened a door for a conversation. And I think we've kind of seen stuff like that too, of people, that are like, I'm going to call my parents. And I know Mike would always say that was something that was important to him. And so seeing it has been really cool to see it really, being meaningful to people. And I think also a lot of people I've seen feel like they see themselves in the characters and Katie and Aaron and kind of the whole family in specific ways. And I think having people see themselves kind of represented and seeing imperfect, specific people, I think is really cool. And so that's been really meaningful too, to have people kind of see themselves, celebrate themselves. The family is kind of imperfect, flawed, kind of quirky, weird, and celebrating. That is really beautiful. So yeah, we've been super excited with like all the positive feedback we've seen. It's been really great.
Oh, and one more thing, I think. Oh, sorry. A lot of people think that some people might be like, oh, is this movie saying that technology is bad? And it's like, no, it's actually not. It's really less about the technology and more about like the family connection, which is,
Yeah, I think it's so, these things are always like a message in a bottle that you send out into the world. And like, if somebody finds it on a beach someday and like it's their favorite movie, you have to be just satisfied with that, or knowing that that's a possibility. So to get such positive feedback so fast is a really special and lucky thing. I think it's interesting that it's a movie about a young person who's hoping to get that kind of feedback that she's seen and that there's somebody else who experiences the world like you do and is excited to see your unique point of view, that there are people out there that are going to validate that. And I think that's all of us, right? Like all of us artists that wear spectacles on some level. We're just kind of like spitting out energy, hoping that it would be valued to anyone at all. So it's quite moving that people get that out of it. And I'd only add this incredibly dry thing, which is that the field of animation, especially in features, is still quite young, and it's so full of possibilities. And so to see a film take chances and have that connect with people, and for it to be seen as an asset and not a liability in terms of the visuals, and just to show people like this is possible, and we hope that you go out and make something and make us look like conservative fuddy-duddies. That's it's really great when a movie gets positive feedback in the marketplace, because it gives a green light to like 100 other people to take even crazier risks. I'm really happy about that.
So we have some questions from the audience. Probably going to take about 2 or 3. So this question is saying, the film has been so popular around the world and has been at the top of Netflix. What has been the best part of seeing fan reactions, fan art, cosplay, memes, etc.?
I mean, the felt manchi is pretty great. We had an art contest that we all were judges on, and so we got to sample all the great fan art that the internet had to offer, and the breadth was quite breathtaking. But just watching somebody cut out pieces of felt and create a kind of arts and crafts version of the movie really warmed my heart.
That's so cool. Where can we see that? Have you posted it?
On Twitter.
What's it? Hashtag is like Manchi art, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Was that right?
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah, but I've loved all of it. Yeah, like I've seen some cool cosplay stuff. Last night I saw somebody that had done like a replica of Katie's phone case, but with their name.
Oh, wow.
And like all those little details, like seeing people make replicas of like her t-shirt. I've loved it. I've loved keeping up with what's going on really social media. And it's super cool. All of it, cosplay, fan art. I love it.
I saw one on Reddit where they actually, a dad like carved the moose.
Oh, the moose.
Moose. I get cute.
And someone in the bottom wrote like a conversation of like that guy's kid going like, "Hey dad, want to come watch this like really cool Netflix movie that showed up?" And then the dad's making the wooden thing. Sorry buddy, I'm a little bit occupado.
Oh like, my god.
It was really cute how like that person was inspired. It's like, I'm just gonna make that moose. And that will be the thing that connects me with my kid.
That's cool.
Magic moose.
Magic moose.
A ver, aquí we have, what was the biggest challenge your team faced throughout the movie and how did you overcome it?
We all have different answers. I'm really curious for you guys. It's okay if you say me.
No, I think from my point of view, the hardest is just the schedule, like that I think when I started it, it was my first time doing this. I think I imagined things would be harder of like, oh, can I pull it off creatively or something? But it's just hard to like, you have all these ideas, you have a plan or you have a set, but now you're in the process of, you're in production, you have a schedule, here's when it's going from layout to animation, and making sure all the things that you've been really thoughtful about or designed really specifically are all getting on screen, and just getting it done in the parameters that you have and in that schedule that you have. It was kind of the hardest part, I think, is doing that. Like, how do you do it on a timeline, and you have to just kind of get really good at kind of prioritizing what the most important things are, and how do you kind of lean on your full team, and how do you kind of work together to get it all on screen when you have a lot of moving parts, changing things, deadlines and stuff. But yeah.
I think for me, it was definitely from the very beginning, it was the balance between bleak and comedic. And because we there was a lot of scenes because we're dealing with a movie about the robot apocalypse, there's a lot of scenes that can really get really dark and really scary. And our approach was to go really scary and then bring it down. Like the dino stop scene was like very dark. What I thought was like, oh, it's hilarious, and then like we saw it in a screening, and I'm like, oh, okay, all right, okay, it's not so because we before it used to be that the robots would just shoot the people with lasers, and the people will get stunned and land on the ground, and yeah, and so like we had, and then I was like, well, what do they do with the humans? And then I was like, I don't know, like maybe they pile them up in a truck, and so they just use a pile of human bodies in the back of a truck.
No
and
big
I'm like,
deal.
yeah,
That's
no
great.
big deal. And then we were like, oh, it's too dark. And then I just added someone going, what's going on? That wasn't enough. And it was just like kind of like I was like, oh, how do we make it less dark? And so we went the opposite route, and it was like they would shoot the lasers, and you would hear like a bloop, like when it captured the human being, and I was like, it's so sweet. And we had like an EP, Mike Moon, who once said like, that's bad. That's bad, man. That's really bad. And we're like, all right, let's go back again to like and just figuring out how to make it so it was like dark but also funny. That also happened to be a really nice collaboration between the story department, animation, and Viz Dev. Because I think we did something that was a little bit we thought was a little bit bleak, but then all of a sudden like Lindsay and her team would just add, like, if you look at that scene, it's just like a cornucopia of bright lush colors, and so like it just really like the colors just brought it down and made it less scary. And I think it was like it was definitely one of the toughest scenes to do, and including with the mall and all of the movie. It was just like a
the whole
concept.
movie was difficult, and I'm here and alive, and I'm proud, and my abuela loves me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just say for me, it was this movie was like the story reels were like a little greased pig that like you would have it, and then you would like go home for the weekend, you'd come back Monday morning, and it had kind of like wiggled over here, and you would it was a lot of effort that everyone put into to make sure that the very funny spontaneous moment that had been captured didn't get stale, or we didn't over egg it or add too much, and suddenly like we killed the joke. It was a lot of for some reason there was not a lot of room for error in this very dense very specific movie, right into through the mix where the wrong sound in the wrong place would distract you and kind of lessen the experience. So we put a lot of effort, everybody did, into making sure that the movie stayed true to what was great about it, and just trying to protect that vision and follow it through and never play it safe was ultimately that was the winning strategy, was to never take your foot off the gas. Mike told me he was like, you're always on offense. I really admire that.
Someone has to be. Well, I cannot thank the three of you enough for taking part in this panel. I hope that you have inspired many future Latinx folks in animation, whether behind the camera, in front of the camera, get more of our stories told. Again, thank you LALIFF, thank you Latinx in animation, and definitely go watch The Mitchells versus the Machines. It's an incredible film.